You have been taught to see Ra as the pinnacle of creation, the unblinking sun god, the father of kings, the divine architect who sailed across the sky in a golden bark, bringing light and life to the world he had spoken into existence. His is the story of ultimate authority, of cosmic order imposed upon the dark, watery chaos of the beginning. But what if the greatest threat he ever faced was not a serpent of the underworld, but a rival who shared his own divine blood? What if his most brilliant, most potent child was not a loyal son, but a daughter whose very existence challenged the nature of his reality? A goddess so formidable in her own right, so revolutionary in her philosophy, that she had to be not just defeated, not just imprisoned, but erased from memory itself, her essence shattered, and her name chiseled from the very stone of time. This is the story that lies in the silent spaces between the hieroglyphs, the heresy that the priesthood of Ra spent 1,000 years trying to bury. When you study the Egyptian pantheon, you see the daughters of Ra as a collection of powerful but seemingly disconnected forces. There is Hathor, the golden goddess of joy and love. There is Sekhmet, the lioness of fury and vengeance. There is Bastet, the mysterious and sovereign cat goddess of the night. They are all presented as distinct beings, each with their own temples, their own rites, their own purpose. But this is the great illusion. It is the aftermath of a cosmic war and a divine cover-up. Because before them, there was one, the original, the archetype from which all the others were carved like fragments from a shattered star. Her name is a whisper now, a word that would cause the priests of old to tremble. Nebet Heka, the Lady of Activation, the Mistress of Magic. A title that did not place her in service to creation, but made her its engine. She was not erased from history because she was evil. She was erased because she was a liberator. Ra, in his infinite order, offered a universe where humanity was a grateful subject, a flock tended by a divine shepherd. Nebet-Heka offered a universe where the sheep could remember they were also shepherds, where every soul had the innate power to weave the fabric of their own reality. Her crime was not treason against her father. It was the teaching of sovereignty to his children, and for that, she had to vanish. Her story was not lost to time. It was assassinated by it. Her identity was splintered, her power diluted and redistributed into safer, more manageable goddesses who would never pose the same existential threat. But you cannot destroy a fundamental principle of the universe. You can only hide it. And the evidence of her existence and of the great war of ideas that led to her erasure is still there for those who are brave enough to look past the golden light of the official story and into the profound creative darkness that was her domain. The proof of her existence is not found in the grand, sun-drenched courtyards of the Karnak temple or in the gilded pages of the official Book of the Dead. To find her, you must look in the shadows, in the margins of history, in the artifacts the priests deemed heretical and tried to bury forever. You find her in the earliest funerary texts, predating the rise of Ra's supreme authority, where spells for the afterlife call upon a nameless daughter to guide the soul not through a hall of judgment, but through a sea of possibilities. You find her etched onto cursed tablets, amulets of black stone buried far from sanctioned tombs, invoking the mistress of the unseen to unravel the fates of enemies. These were not prayers to a state god. They were pacts with a primal force. The most startling evidence comes from the rogue stargazers, the mystic astronomers whose observatories in the deep desert were later destroyed. Their charts, fragments of which survived, mapped the celestial movements with an impossible precision. And on these charts, Alongside the sun, the moon, and the 5 visible planets, there is another symbol, a black circle with a single point of light at its center, referred to as the Dark Companion or the Unseen Sun. It was a celestial body whose movements were tied to cycles of intuition, prophecy, and spontaneous creation. In later, state-approved astronomical texts, it is simply gone, wiped from the sky, a cosmic redaction. But her true nature is revealed not in what was written, but in the philosophy she embodied. The conflict with her father was not a petty squabble for a throne. It was a fundamental cosmological disagreement about the nature of existence itself. Ra's power was projection. He was the singular point of light, the divine will that radiated outward, casting reality into a fixed and ordered form. His was a universe of laws, hierarchies, and predetermined structures. He created, and the rest of creation's role was to exist within that established framework. He was the architect, and the world was his great and perfect building. Nebet-Heka's power was the opposite. It was resonance. She was the goddess of the state before creation, the silent, infinite, dark potential from which all forms arise. The Egyptians called this pre-creative abyss the Nuun, the watery chaos. Ra saw it as something to be conquered, to be pushed back and ordered. Nebet-Heka saw it as the source. Her domain was the quantum field, the space of infinite possibility before the divine observer collapses it into a single reality. She taught that this field was not the domain of the gods alone. It was the birthright of all conscious beings. While Ra's priests taught elaborate rituals to beseech the gods for intervention, Nebet-Heka's initiates practiced a form of deep internal alchemy. They learned to quiet the mind, to step beyond the world of defined forms, and to enter a state of pure resonance with the field of potential. From that state of profound stillness, they did not need to pray for what they wanted. They could call it into being. They could align their consciousness with a desired possibility within the infinite field, and through their own focused intention, collapse that possibility into their physical reality. This was the ultimate heresy. It rendered the entire priestly class obsolete. It turned the gods from masters into, at best, advisors. She wasn't teaching humanity to overthrow Ra. She was teaching them how to evolve beyond the need for him. She saw humanity not as flawed children in need of a stern father, but as nascent creators, ready to become partners in the cosmic dance. And that vision, a vision of a fully empowered, sovereign human race, was a vision that the established order could not and would not tolerate. It was a future Ra had to prevent at any cost. A humanity that understands it can co-create its own reality is a humanity that no longer builds temples to external gods. It is a humanity that turns inward and builds the temple within. This was the existential threat Nebet-Heka posed. Her teachings were not a call to arms, but a call to awakening, and an awakened population is the end of any system based on control. Ra's power, and that of his entire pantheon, was maintained by a vast and intricate energetic economy. The fuel for this economy was belief. Every prayer, every festival, every sacrifice, every whispered plea from a mortal heart generated a specific and potent form of psychic energy. This energy flowed from humanity to the gods, sustaining them, empowering them, and anchoring their influence in the terrestrial realm. In return, the gods maintained the stability of the world. They kept the sun in the sky, the Nile in its banks, and the forces of chaos at bay. It was a grand, symbiotic relationship, but it was one founded on humanity's perceived powerlessness. Nebet-Heka's teachings threatened to bankrupt this entire system. She was, in effect, teaching humanity how to divert the energy of their own consciousness away from the gods and back into themselves to fuel their own creative potential. This could not be allowed. Ra, as the embodiment of divine order and structure, could not tolerate this vision of decentralized, creative chaos. It was antithetical to his very nature. But he faced a dilemma. He could not destroy Nebet-Heka. She was not a lesser god or a rebellious demon. She was a fundamental principle of existence itself, the void, the potential, the darkness that gives birth to light. To destroy her would be to destroy the very possibility of creation. So, he chose a different strategy, one of subtle and terrifying genius. If you cannot kill a god, you can make the world forget her. He commanded his priesthood, the powerful and disciplined initiates of Heliopolis, to undertake a task of cosmic censorship, the Great Redaction. It was a campaign waged not with armies, but with chisels and incantations. Over generations, her name and image were systematically removed from every monument, every temple, every public record in the land. Scribes were tasked with rewriting the great myths, carefully excising her role, attributing her deeds to other gods, or twisting her philosophy into a cautionary tale about the dangers of the abyss. Her hidden temples, built in places of deep earthly silence, were either destroyed or reconsecrated to other, safer deities. Her priests were hunted, branded heretics, and their knowledge was driven underground, forced into the shadows where it would eventually curdle into the dark magic that the state religion could then publicly condemn. But her archetypal energy was too vast, too essential to the human psyche to be completely annihilated. You cannot erase the concept of the unknown, of potential, of the sacred darkness. So, the priesthood performed its most brilliant and insidious act of magic. They took her essence, her divine being, and they shattered it. They performed a great ritual of cosmic surgery, carving her wholeness into fractured, manageable pieces, and distributing those pieces among new or re-envisioned goddesses who would each carry a single, diluted aspect of her original power. Her fierce, untamable, and protective nature, her righteous fury against imbalance, was isolated and poured into the vessel of Sekhmet, the lioness goddess. This turned her protective fire into a weapon that could be conveniently unleashed and then blamed for its excess. Her boundless joy, her deep connection to life, music, and creation, her nurturing, motherly aspect was channeled into the gentle, benevolent form of Hathor. This made her creative powers safe, domestic, and non-threatening. Her mysterious, nocturnal wisdom, her sovereignty over the unseen, her connection to intuition and the magic of the moon, was diluted and given to the cat goddess Bastet, turning her deep esoteric knowledge into a more whimsical, detached kind of magic. Even the great Isis, whose power as a magician and sovereign queen grew exponentially during this period, inherited a piece of Nebet-Heka's knowledge of cosmic law and her fierce loyalty. They created a pantheon of powerful but ultimately incomplete divine feminine figures. Each one was a safe, compartmentalized version of a single aspect of the original. None of them held the terrifying and liberating wholeness of Nebet-Heka, the goddess who was both the darkness and the light, the potential and the act, the womb and the warrior. The world was given a cast of characters, but the protagonist of the story had been written out of existence, and humanity was left with a divine family that was beautifully, tragically, and intentionally broken. The consequence of this act was not just a change in religion. It was a fundamental shift in the consciousness of the world. By erasing the goddess of potential and shadow, Ra's priesthood created a universe dangerously out of balance. They elevated the principles of order, structure, light, and the known, the archetypally masculine domain of Ra, to a position of absolute supremacy. And in doing so, they suppressed, demonized, and taught humanity to fear the very principles embodied by Nebet-Heka, the creative chaos, the fertile darkness, the intuitive unknown, the archetypally feminine void from which all creation is born. The result is the civilization we have inherited, a world built on the worship of the sun, but terrified of the night. A world that has become a monument to Ra's philosophy. We are obsessed with logic, control, data, and measurement. We strive to illuminate every mystery, to solve every equation, to banish every shadow. Our systems, economic, political, and social, are hierarchical, competitive, and expansionist, driven by a relentless need to impose order on the natural world. We have built a reality that is technologically brilliant, structured, and efficient, but it is spiritually bankrupt. We suffer from a profound famine of meaning precisely because we have cut ourselves off from the source of all meaning. The mysterious, unquantifiable, and silent abyss of potential that Nebet-Heka represented. We have been taught to fear our own inner darkness. Our subconscious is seen as a dangerous cellar of repressed monsters. Our intuition is dismissed as unreliable fantasy. Our emotions are treated as inconvenient glitches in our rational programming. We are a civilization that has exiled half of its own soul, and now, that exiled half is beginning to return. The cracks are appearing in Ra's perfect, sunlit prison. The global awakening you are witnessing now is not a New Age trend. It is the beginning of a planetary-scale act of remembering. The resurgence of interest in the divine feminine, in shadow work, in consciousness, in the very quantum principles that describe a universe of infinite potential. This is the collective human psyche unconsciously reaching for the goddess it was forced to forget. We are trying to heal the wound of the Great Redaction. We are trying to reintegrate the exiled darkness, the chaos, the uncertainty, the breakdown of old structures that you see all around you. This is not the end of the world. This is the symptom of a reality trying to rebalance itself. It is the painful, disorienting, and absolutely necessary process of Nebet-Heka's energy seeping back into a world that has been starved of it for too long. She is returning not as a personified goddess from the sky, but as an awakening principle within us. She rises in the people who are leaving the rigid, soulless structures of the corporate world to pursue a life of passion and creativity. She rises in the scientists who are brave enough to explore the mysteries of consciousness, even if it means defying the dogma of materialism. She rises in every person who chooses to face their own shadow, to heal their own trauma, to trust their own intuition over the noise of the external world. The resurgence of her energy is terrifying to the old guard, to the systems that still run on Ra's programming of control and hierarchy. They will fight it. They will call it chaos, irrationality, a descent into darkness. They will try to distract you, to frighten you, to convince you to stay in the safe, familiar light of the known world. But you cannot unring a bell. You cannot unsee a truth. The memory of our own wholeness is returning, and with it comes the chance to build a new world, a world where the sun and the void are not at war, but in a sacred dance. A world where light does not seek to conquer the darkness, but to emerge from it, honor it, and return to it. A world that is not just ordered, but alive with infinite possibility. The story of the forgotten daughter is not a myth about the gods. It is the story of a forgotten part of you. You have been raised in a world that taught you to compartmentalize yourself, to value certain aspects of your being and to exile others. You were taught to worship the light, your successes, your logic, your social mask, your productivity. And you were taught to fear, suppress, and be ashamed of the darkness, your vulnerability, your intuition, your chaotic creativity, your silent, formless depths. The Great Redaction did not just happen in ancient Egypt. It happens inside you every single day. Every time you silence your intuition because it doesn't seem logical. Every time you push away a difficult emotion because you're afraid of what it might reveal. Every time you choose the safety of a known path over the terrifying freedom of an unknown one, you are reenacting the priest's choice. You are choosing Ra's ordered cage over Nebet-Heka's creative void. But true power, true wholeness, is not found in choosing one over the other. It is found in their integration. It is in the sacred marriage of the sun and the abyss within your own soul. It is the understanding that your greatest strengths are born from your deepest vulnerabilities, that your most brilliant flashes of inspiration emerge from the silent darkness of your unknowing. That true order is not rigid control, but a dynamic, fluid dance with the chaos of potential. The path to remembering Nebet-Heka is the path of shadow work. It is the courageous journey into the parts of yourself you have been taught to hate. It is not about indulging in negativity or chaos. It is about bringing the light of your conscious awareness into those dark places, not to conquer them, but to understand them, to listen to them, and to reclaim the exiled power that lies dormant there. This is the real magic. This is the Heka she taught. Not the manipulation of external reality, but the complete and fearless integration of your internal one. When you do this, you stop being a fractured reflection of a fractured pantheon. You become whole. And a whole being is a sovereign being. You no longer need external validation from a sun god or a social system, because you have found the source of light within your own darkness. You are no longer afraid of the unknown, because you recognize it as the womb of all creation. So, look at your life. Look at the world. The priests of Ra taught you to pray to the light for salvation. But what if the keys to your liberation, the very blueprints of your own creative power, are hidden in the darkness you were taught to fear? What if the voice you have been calling God is only one half of a much larger, more profound conversation? The daughter was erased from the temples, her name chiseled from the stone, but her signature remains. It remains in the unpredictable beauty of a storm. It remains in the terrifying stillness before a breakthrough idea. It remains in the silent, infinite potential that hums beneath the noise of the constructed world. Most of all, it remains in you. In the parts of you that refuse to be categorized, that refuse to be tamed, that still remember the call of the void. You don't need to build her a new temple. You just need to turn your awareness inward and begin the work of dismantling the one Ra's priests built inside your own mind. The one that tells you to fear your own depth. The one that tells you to stay in the light. Because the greatest truth Nebet-Heka taught was this: the only way to truly command the light is to first become the master of your own sacred, creative darkness.